Thank you, April, and thank you for joining us. I know there'll be a few more people that come in here in a few minutes. It's an honor to be here. This is a really special building. I've been in a concert in this room with one of the great entertainers of our generation, which was great. And about a year ago, my daughter got married, and the reception was upstairs in a glassed-in room on the top floor. And for those of you that have not been up there, even if it's not a wedding going on, it's a great room. But when it's your daughter's wedding, it's a really, really great room with a lot of good memories. So it is great to be back here. And it's great to be with Alex KARP. And Alex is the co-founder and CEO of PALANTIR Technologies. Many of you may have seen Alex speak before or on podcasts, on other videos that get posted through other social media platforms. But this will be a really interesting discussion about a background that drove him into this business and a push into healthcare in a meaningful way. And since we're here to talk healthcare, we're going to lead off with healthcare. But we're going to do that after we learn a little bit more about Alex. So maybe, Alex, if we could start for everybody, just give us a little bit of kind of your story, your childhood, what led you to this place, and I know you finished up with a PhD in philosophy in Frankfurt, and then ultimately we'll get into your business life.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, and delighted to be on stage with you. We might talk about this later, but I do think the culture here, if you look at industries that America dominates, music, entertainment, and tech, there are more similarities. But to my personal biography, one of the most important parts of American outperformance is the management of talent that doesn't really fit. You know, I wouldn't even know where to start in my biography to say in which ways I don't fit, but there's a lot there. You can read about it. So when we were looking at building this company, I wouldn't even know how to metabolize a playbook. So most tech is built, not the great companies, but where you would make most of your money is you have a playbook, you have like a thin software product and thick sales, and you hire a CEO that's really good at, basically from Wall Street, but can pretend they're not. You know, the engineers that are good mostly leave, but that's how you're like replaying the same record. And I mean, there's a lot in my biography. I tend to over-index on my severe dyslexia, which now I'm convinced at some point people will be teaching children how to be dyslexic so that you can succeed in business. But honestly, it's given the outperformance of dyslexics in business, but it was definitely not something I wished upon myself. And I come from an academic family where the one metric of success is basically not being dyslexic. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a scary thing. It kind of looks romantic now because I think people view that as a feature. But then when we just made every decision incorrectly in building our business, and I think we're at the infancy of our business, but you know, we're a multi-billion-dollar revenue company with a sizable market cap. People think we've done very well, and I think it's a lot because we harness on the inside the best talent in the world, and I approach them, quite frankly, as dyslexics because we have some people in the room. These are truly unique individuals with very special needs. You know, and they actually do have special needs. It's like they have to work in an environment where people respect their technical prowess. I often say, in jazz, there was this thing, the blue note, which is a note I can't hear. I bet almost no one in the room can hear, and very few people can play. And the people we manage at Palantir can either play or hear the blue note, and they need a specialized environment to build the kind of things we build and to work with enterprises. And I have co-built and managed that environment.
So I read your bio as well, and I know you went to Stanford Law. Best I could tell, I searched every state database, and I could not find that you passed the bar.
I didn't take it.
Oh, you didn't take the test.
No,
So
there
you went
was
to
no
Stanford Law, didn't take the
failure.
test.
There was no, yeah.
And then you pick up and move overseas shortly thereafter to study in Frankfurt. What really drove you into law school, and then what drove you out of that and into your time over in Frankfurt?
Well, my dad is a pediatrician for low-income children, but he writes a lot about malnutrition and a bunch of other things. And so I saw this as, if I go to law school, maybe I can help out. And I didn't know who I wanted to help out, but I figured someone needed help. And I hated every minute of it. So I was like, I don't know how many I'm going to help anyone out when I hate doing this. And I'm kind of driven by mission, so it's hard for me to be good at something I don't believe in. And then I believed in getting a PhD in German philosophy, and then I realized that was a waste. And I worked with some of the best people in the world, and arguably the best person in the world, and I realized I didn't want to be him, and I couldn't be him. And then I also realized there was a couple skills I had that were like, I wouldn't have recognized them at the time, but like what you could call building skills. Like it is a skill to be able to organize people to build something useful, especially when those people are very difficult and don't want to listen. We have a couple of the more difficult people here and doing phenomenal work. And so
You're looking at your team members?
Oh, I'm looking at my team members.
Okay,
yeah,
I couldn't
no.
see.
No,
Back over my shoulder.
No, we have.
I thought you were talking about my team members.
They're here. This is no. Your team is pretty straightforward. Our team.
Check.
Yeah. And so yeah, I then came back to America, and then I reconnected with my co-founder, who at the time was moderately famous, Peter. And one day he called me, and we had done some things together, and then he called me, well, do you want to co-found this company? And I'm always giving this advice to younger people. You know, a lot of people, I give them an offer, and they're like, well, what's the pay? What's the health? What's the benefits? And I just said yes. I was like, well, and I started, and then it turned out that part of a business is you have to manage the people on the inside, and occasionally people have to pay you. And there was no one who was better at that than me at the company. I'm not saying there wasn't anyone better in the universe, but and I had some insights for our original product that turned out to be pretty valuable, that still are valuable now. And I don't know, I fell in love with, our mission, and I really like the people, and that's why I'm doing it 20 years later.
It's great. Well, Palantir now over 2 decades old. Many of the companies that are represented in this room are, 2 decades old, maybe 2 weeks old, and maybe 50 years old. So we're all in different phases of the evolution of our business models as well. And I do want to come back to the beginning of Palantir in a little bit, because I do think it's an important part of the story. But I want to fast forward. Out of the last almost over 20 years, over 2 decades, the last 3 years have been just an enormous amount of change that we've all felt and lived through in this room. Some perhaps more acutely than others, but everybody was supporting each other in navigating the pandemic. But when I go back to the early part of 2020 and I think about the pandemic, and now I think about Palantir's push into healthcare, there's 2 or 3 things I'd like to maybe have you comment on. One is the work that you did with the federal government as it related to the pandemic, because I think it ties into the core competency and the mission of Palantir. There was a financing transaction where you took your company public in September of 2020. Now, there are some bankers in the room, and I don't know where they are, but I was with a few of them last night. I'll be with a few more later on tonight. But you didn't do a traditional IPO. You did something completely different, so I want to come back and talk about that. And then I want to end up in the big push that you're making into healthcare and why the big push in healthcare over these last several years. So maybe let's start with the COVID response, and then we'll come back and talk about the offering.
Well, I remember I was out actually cross-country skiing, which is my big hobby, and then I realized, wow, this is real. And then there's, and then mainly in the U.S., what in every Western country, we had shortages, and so some of it was PPE, and then there was the distribution of the vaccine. But the core technical issue were not the shortages; it was that these data sets are disparate, and the underlying logic of the data set is built so that you can't get a unified answer, not by intention. And those of you who are running larger, maybe slightly older companies will find that just like the federal governments all over the world, you're basically sewn together different companies where each company had a logic of viewing their business model, and they impose that on the data, and then it makes it very hard to optimize. And optimization is the name of the game when you have a crisis, and then optimizing where you have data protection, civil liberties constraints is a very difficult problem, and especially difficult where, every minute counts. And so then the real problem was, well, how do we get, and we were very successful in getting the US and the UK to adopt this product we had built. Now, we had built this product foundry, obviously not with healthcare in mind. We had built it because we believed that the underlying technical integration issues of large enterprises were actually deeper than the enterprises themselves realized, especially if there's a regulatory or security overlay. So we worked for a number of years on this with some of the best engineers in the world, and it was not popular internally or externally to invest this much time on it, but we ended up with exactly the right product, what bankers would call product market fit, what I would call like fortuitous. The real problem was political. So, there's always these memes that, because like Peter, who was, conservative, it was actually hard because, they didn't want to have any appearance of conflict of interest. So the White House was like, well, we can take your calls on Tuesday at 2:30 with 15 witnesses, and it was really hard. And then somehow we got to content providers who knew the technical challenge, and that was the breakthrough, because the technical, in America and the UK, for all the things we could do better, without picking on other countries, the mortality rates in some large European countries were much higher than they had to be because they called their buddies, and their buddies don't have the right product. And in this country, in the United Kingdom, the technical people, and I would say an unsung hero in COVID, I mean, because we're so balkanized politically, if it happened under Trump, no one could, if it happened to, no one wants to admit the other side did anything right. But the Army Corps of Engineers saved more lives than any other. I mean, those guys, some people in my company, you might imagine, are slightly arrogant. And we were, not so much you guys, but so I was really worried we wouldn't have a counterparty that would be able to help us install the product. These are the largest data sets in the world. They're disparate. Potentially millions of lives are at stake. It's going to go in our product. And I called somebody at Palantir who's crazy talented, but, thinks everyone else is less talented. And I was like, well, how good are the people? He's like, no, they're very good. And that's when I knew we were going to have a huge impact. And I really think it's a tragedy, those Army Corps of Engineers. Maybe it's better for us. They kind of disappeared into the woodwork, but they are really big unsung heroes and probably changed the mortality rates in this country by 50%, if I had to guess. I mean, obviously our product and others. And that's how we ended up being the software infrastructure for the distribution in here, UK, I think 17 other countries.
So talk to us, and we'll come back to the public offering. Talk to us a little bit about the push into healthcare. And I'll share a little bit of my experience early on with Palantir as well, but I'd love to hear, you learn, you have a core competency, you've been in business for 20 years, COVID hits. I've heard you say it's not how well you plan, it's how you react to things that you can't plan for. And so that hits, it may even strengthen your core competency or the conviction around the core competency. And now a big push into healthcare in a meaningful way, and probably one of the reasons why you're sitting here today. I know you're working with Cleveland Clinic, you're working with Tampa General, you're working with HCA in a meaningful way here, and we're beginning to do some work together, and that's just kind of scratching the surface of what the potential is.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, a year ago, at least the stats we had, it was roughly 1% of healthcare in the U.S. was somehow using Palantir. Now it's 16%. So I am so obviously, look, there's innumerable reasons to care about healthcare, and I don't have to lecture anyone in this room, but we do very well at the convergence of mission, deep technical challenges, and operators, or in this case, doctors, nurses, health providers who are technically specialized, because also you can't just tell those people to use the product. You're going to have to convince them, whether it's, an analyst in a specialized analyst in a bank or at oil and gas company or in the government or a doctor. So it's like end user is trained and has opinions, which has huge advantages, but that also means they're going to say no. And you can't just say, use this technology, what's your recourse, or we'll fire you. They'll laugh at you. It's like, yeah, right, you're not firing me. I'm going back to my job, schmuck. And so, and then you have very, very deep technical challenges, and this is where the playbook methodology that some bankers love totally over a medium to long time horizon really doesn't work, because the challenges you're having to meet purely technically would require a team, hundreds of millions of dollars. So we're aligned with you because you don't have the time, patience, or margins for that, and the costs are too high. Human costs, humanitarian cost of lives. The people I've met who are running these companies, I would say especially the ones we're working with, but not, I don't know all of them, are technical experts. So technical experts both know what they know, they also know what they don't know. So we bond well with culturally. And then it's an environment where you really can show results. So we struggle, we have basically no clients in Hollywood. Well, how can you show a Hollywood executive something that is like the mathematical delta between how their movie would have been made with or without software? Maybe there isn't any, but it would be hard to show them that. That's not what they do for a living. You're going to appreciate that. And then obviously anything that can, raise the quality of your product, the happiness of your end users, and make your margins better. And then, we do industry where, look, our political elite probably should be looking for ways to make your industry easier, but that's not going to happen. So, realistically, it's not my area, but I would be skeptical. So you're going to really want to partner with, and so that looks like a really strong sweet spot. And then on our end, we have a very strong team. I was in the office over the weekend a couple weekends ago, in a weird hour, and the people in the office, a large percentage of them were working on these use cases. Now, I think it's partly because the two guys over there have done a great job of recruiting inside Palantir, but it's also, you have a very compelling, we're helping you to improve human lives. And we like that. And I think when people interact with us, whether it's in healthcare or defense, people sense we actually do care. It doesn't mean we're not commercial actors. Of course we are. But, I've been at this for 20 years, and in cases, we do have purely commercial clients, but I would say in this area, broadly speaking, and in defense, we really aren't making a lot of compromises. Yeah.
We're a very mission-driven company as well, and I've been excited about some of the products that we're building together by taking, highly fragmented information sitting in different silos and bringing it together in a meaningful way that can impact decisions on the front line. It's not for myself to have or for our senior leaders that live here in Nashville to have, although it's nice information. It's really intended for that caregiver that's closest to the patient to impact a life. And we have hospitals and care settings in some smaller communities around the country, and you and I have visited on this before. It's important to me that we bring world-class technology and partners into our communities. So our communities aren't saying, we finally got a Starbucks. We're the last one to get a Starbucks. We're bringing state-of-the-art new technology to help impact care and improve life. So we're directly aligned with you on the mission.
And I'll tell you another way we're aligned that's counterintuitive. So, for reasons that don't always make sense, I have millions and millions of people that follow me in Palantir, and a lot of them are being served by you. And these followers of Palantir, they invest in us. They run around the country saying, "Well, you're not using Palantir? Are you crazy?" We have one big partner, and the person there, this is not a technically, the person has just done everything for us on the other end. And I was randomly in the office late at night, and we were doing a call, and a person showed up, and I'm like, "Well, why are you working on the Palantir stack at 9:30 on Friday evening?" And the person's like, "You're fighting for my freedoms. I'm going to fight to make sure my company uses your product." So I really care about these people. I cared about them before they helped out Palantir. And so, I think, okay, great. I help you, you'll help them. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's pivot real quick for maybe a couple of minutes on the offering that you did in September 2020. And as I said, you have some bankers in the room. You did something probably in totally keeping with Palantir, the interesting company that's always looking at it from a different angle. But you decided, alongside maybe a couple of other high-profile names, to, instead of using and going through an IPO that we always talk about in this city with various companies, but a direct public offering. What led you to that answer, and why did you think that was the best solution for you and your shareholders? I didn't think you heard me there for a second.
No, there's just a lot there, and I don't, it's like, look, I don't want to open the bloody wounds of my bad relationship with bankers. And it's like, look, in the end of the day, there are real reasons to, the IPO will align you with bankers because they control the offering, and whatever, it's your job. It's your job to provide healthcare. And I actually partner. We have some very big bank partners, and there's some people in banking I revere. But obviously your job, the IPO helps you make money for you and your partners. What was very healthy for us in the DPO is, although we probably pissed off all the analysts, and I still fight with them because it was yet another data point that I'm not going to play by their rules, it fully aligned us with our core retail investors. So if you look at most people who IPO during the time, their shares are very far underwater, and the people who were in the IPO made money, and it's no wonder that maybe retail investors and people investing their own money have a very different opinion of Palantir than they might have of a company that IPO'd. Now, if an entrepreneur asked me what you should do, I don't believe every entrepreneur should DPO over IPO, but it clearly was the right, it depends. And if you are closer to the norm, IPOing is probably the easier and better thing to do. You probably will make the average person a lot less money than what they expect to make. On the other hand, the bankers are very good at explaining to each other why you're a better company than you are. So I think I'm being fairly fair here. I mean, I could go a lot further. I'm on my best behavior. It's
time to cut him off.
Believe me, I'm on my best behavior here. I'm trying to move forward. We're moving forward.
Well, let's move forward. Let's go ahead and move forward. Let's go back. Well, we're going to move forward by moving backwards. You talked about 20 plus years ago, a very special friend of yours called and asked you to co-found a company, and you didn't ask too many questions. You didn't ask how much stock am I going to get. You said yes, and I appreciate the simplicity of that answer. But when you think about, where the company started, just real quick about, the beginnings of the company, and then I would like to talk about the role that you're playing, the active role that you're playing in whether it's global or federal national discussions around the use of artificial intelligence. And we know that you're doing a lot of work around the world in different countries. But just really the starting of Palantir, why it started, and then how you're using that as a platform to help shape the narrative and the discussion around AI, both at a federal level and a national level. I mean, a global level.
Yeah. Well, look, it was a very hard beginning because at the time, this was our other misalignment. We got kicked out of every VC in Silicon Valley with the comment that, well, why would anyone believe in building a company around data? Why would anyone work with the U.S. government? You're saying this will take years to build, and we're financing, the cockroachtrap.com, which is going to make billions of dollars, and the person running it is less difficult than you. So it was a hard beginning, and actually a number of the people who are running the company were, well, like part of the reason I was thinking, well, when the money runs out, who's going to keep working? I promoted all those people, and so there's many of them are still running the company, and there was a deep focus, like from the beginning, on you can't really, if you're dealing with large systems around the world, you can't actually solve the final mile without going very deep into the first 10,000 miles of tech issues, and you have to show up with a product that will allow you to quote unquote leapfrog everything, which in some cases means it will work as opposed to everything else. And you also need macro conditions where it's painful enough that people are willing to change. And we really need both deep, relevant technology and favorable macro conditions. And then a lot of the things so that the first product we built was for basically finding terrorists, but finding terrorists where you protect data or protect civil liberties. And some of those core architectural issues that are now in Foundry, the product that we sell to commercial enterprises, are absolutely crucial to powering, managing, teaching algorithms. And so it's not the same product. You have to build different products, but like, for example, with large language models, you have similar issues, like who's going to teach the large language model? How are you going to teach the large language, optimize it without teaching it your secrets or outsourcing proprietary data? How do you do this while verifying that you're not involved in illegal or unethical behavior? How do you do it while having a governance structure that allows you to do a human verification if these are the decisions you believe in? How do you decide what parts of your business can be influenced or run by imprecise logic? For example, there's a part of your business where you're recruiting people. Well, maybe, since you're interviewing anyway, it would be better it's the thresholding of getting down to 10 people is more important than being exactly right. But then there are parts of your business where you're deciding where to put the scalpel. That has to be 1,000% right. And so, and then there are regulatory and moral issues. The person or robot or whatever using the scalpel, who controls that? Where is the human in the loop? How did you know that the human was what algorithms are those algorithms? What is the data set they hit? All these issues that, quite frankly, people are now discovering because the addressable market is so large. We've been engaged in for 20 years and in a serious way in AI for 5 years. And the real AI revolution actually began on the battlefield, and the results of which have been seen in Ukraine, in the sense that a smaller power has done much better than anyone would have expected. Where I'm spending a lot of time personally, and something that you might want to help out with, is about 0.2% of the DoD budget, 0.2% goes to AI. 0.2%. That 0.2% is going to play a critical role needs to play a critical role in scaring our adversaries. We may not agree with it, but if you do agree with it, with the fact that we should scare our adversaries to create peace, we have to really look very closely on what we're spending and who gets the money.
Thank you for sharing that. And I assume the 0.2% needs to be more than 0.2% for us to tackle the challenges of the future.
And any investment in anything, it comes down to who gets the money, like whether that's anything, and that's something we as a country have to think a lot about.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. We have a few more minutes left, and I wanted to just get into a couple of things. One of the things you talk about is identifying problems before they even exist, and maybe even developing products 5 years before they're even needed. And so your ability to look around a corner is something that I think is very unique and interesting for all of us. And I want to come back to that at the very end of this discussion. One of the things I've
By the way, you're a great interviewer. If I could only be half as good as you.
Oh, come on. Come on.
Yeah, no, it's great. You give like a warning of where it's going, and then I can think about it.
I heard you're slow on your feet. Your staff did a good job prepping me.
It's a really good.
No, one of the things I've enjoyed about getting to know you is, how you identify talent. We are all challenged with workforce and workforce challenges, and you built a big company spread out throughout the world. You're interviewing highly technical, capable people doing, in many cases, super classified type work, and you've got to be right very often. One of the things that I learned from you is just how you tend to interview people and how quick you interview people. And I think that'd be something fun for you to share with the group on your style when something comes across your desk and we're ready to hire somebody. How much time do you spend in that interview, and what can you glean in a short amount of time?
Yeah, one of the things I think I've done it, honestly, there's a lot of things I've done I would wish I had done a better job on. But the one thing I think I'm reasonably certain I did a great job on was being involved in the hiring of the first three. I mean, at least the first 100 and 350. You could call it the first 500-600 people I hired personally, and then made sure and really was heavily involved in who runs what and who's on what deployment, as we called it at the time. And so this was a little bit legendary in the Valley because the venture people were like, this company is crazy. It's stealing talent from our, consumer internet companies that are making our societies less safe, less fun, and more divided, but making us wealthy. And they hated me. They probably still do, but also a little proud of that. But it's counterintuitive. But what I was very good at was not the standard way people interview is a long interview with all sorts of questions. I found that my reaction to people in the first couple minutes was most accurate. And now part of it was I tend to believe most of the great talent in America is not at the elite schools, although we have hired disproportionately from elite schools. And one of the things you learn at an elite school is how to answer questions correctly. But that's very different than how to do your work correctly. And so, I'm testing for someone's going to be valuable in 5 years and 10 years, not somebody, I went to Stanford, someone has the skills to get you into Stanford. And so that by having a shorter interview, first of all, you make the playing field more level. Also, you won't let people get into their sales mode. And often if you ask a question and they're not expecting you to ask, you just get a jarringly honest answer. In some cases, the answer will be, some of my engineers will just look at me like, the answer was I can't answer. But then like, okay, well, that's an interesting answer too. But the intuition around who to hire, those hires built our products, and have changed the history of America.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Rapid fire, real quick here. What do you do for fun? What does Alex go do for fun?
cross-country skiing, Tai Chi, and distance shooting.
Is that where you do your thinking, or is that just where you kind of clear your brain and focus on those activities that free up space for you to dream?
Yeah, I like being alone, so those activities I'm alone doing, and then I feel very much less shackled, and I often come up with, not always, but I come up with, not usually while I'm doing the activities, but so if I go if I'm cross country or doing something, then afterwards, usually I'll have, they're not always profound thoughts, but it might be, oh, this isn't going to work. Oh, this person needs to be moved, or, and sometimes they are like profound. Like that's how I came up with the DPO. Like we had told people for 17 years at the time we wouldn't IPO, and then I was in New Hampshire. I had gone for one of these interval runs. I came home like, oh, that's stupid. We need to change this. And then I called, typically if you're doing an IPO or DPO, people prepare, like they start their company and start prepping for this. We literally had no preparation. And I remember calling our CFO at the time. I'm like, okay, sit down. We have 8 weeks. We're going to do this. It's like 8 weeks. This has never been done. And, and then we got.
That sounds like the owner of our company.
Yeah. It took us a little longer than 8 weeks. And he's like, but the accountants tell us it'll take 8 months. I'm like, well, I don't know. We got to get that down to, yeah.
That's great. Bring us home here, and we'll conclude on this. Help us look around the corner with you for just a few seconds. In 10 years, and I know that's just the beginning of the company. You'll be 3 decades in for something that you're building to last much longer than that. But 10 years from now, what does Palantir look like?
Well, I think we will power, along with others, a rejuvenation of Western defense efforts. We will build products that make people in the West, but particularly in America, mainly because America is so much more receptive to technology, which is really a problem for the rest of our allies, and they're just not adapting as fast as we are, and I'm worried that they're going to get left behind. And then, so that's the positive side, and I hope we play a role in making sure, the dangers of AI are ameliorated, and that there's kind of positive transparency so that people know they're being treated fairly. You have more buy-in for, general society.
Well, we look forward to seeing the journey, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing to change healthcare, but to also make the world a safer place. There's a lot of things that we don't see that you're doing, but we know that there's things being powered behind the scenes. So thank you for doing that. We look forward to seeing the success. Another round of applause for co-founder and CEO, Alex KARP.